Rome, an empire that stood as the most powerful force in the world for over 1,000 years. A civilization that shaped law, architecture, warfare, and governance in ways still felt today. But how did this mighty empire arise from a small city on the banks of the Tiber to become the dominant superpower of the ancient world? And more importantly, why did it collapse so dramatically, plunging into chaos, invasions, and ruin? Today, we uncover the true story of Rome's incredible ascent and its shocking fall. From the legendary rise of the Republic to the triumph of the Caesars, from glorious victories to internal corruption and ultimate downfall, Rome's history is a lesson in power, ambition, and the dangers of decline. And here's the most important question: could history be repeating itself? Could our modern world, with its vast empires and global influence, be on a similar path to Rome's fate? Stay with us as we unravel the past and glimpse into the future.
It all began with a legend, one of fate, ambition, and blood. Twin brothers, Romulus and Remus, abandoned as helpless infants, were left to die. But against all odds, they survived, nurtured not by human hands, but by a she-wolf, a symbol of strength and primal destiny. As they grew, fate led them to the banks of the Tiber River, where they dreamed of building a great city. A city that would stand for eternity. But dreams gave way to ambition, and ambition turned to rivalry. A bitter dispute arose over who would rule this new city, and in a fit of rage, Romulus struck down his own brother, his own flesh and blood. With Remus dead, Romulus claimed victory and named the city after himself, Rome. But was this act of violence simply an accident of history? Or was it an omen? A foreshadowing of a brutal cycle of power struggles, betrayal, and conquest that would shape Rome's destiny for centuries to come. From its very first breath, Rome was born in blood. And its story was only just beginning. For centuries, Rome was ruled by kings. Some wise, some just. But the last Tarquin the Proud was different. Arrogant. Cruel. A tyrant who ruled through fear. The people had suffered enough. Then, in 509 BC, Rome erupted. The citizens, warriors, senators, commoners rose against their king. His reign ended not with a whimper, but with a revolution. Tarquin was cast out, and in his place, a bold experiment began: the Roman Republic. This was no ordinary government. Power was no longer held by one man, but by many elected officials, senators, and magistrates, each with a role to play. The Republic was designed to prevent tyranny, but make no mistake, it wasn't built for peace. Rome's new leaders were more than politicians. They were warriors, strategists, conquerors. They understood one truth: survival meant expansion. They formed alliances, broke them when needed, and crushed any who stood in their way. Their legions marched with discipline, their armies perfected the brutal science of war. One by one, their enemies fell. First, the rival cities of Italy. Then, foreign powers beyond. Rome was no longer just a city, it was an unstoppable force. But power, true power, always comes at a cost. And as Rome expanded, so did its ambitions. The question was no longer who they could defeat, but how long they could control what they had built. Would the Republic stand the test of time? Or was it destined to crumble under the very weight of its own success? Rome hungered for expansion, but one enemy stood in its way: Carthage. Wealthy, powerful, and unyielding. Their rivalry ignited the Punic Wars, a brutal conflict that raged for over a century. Victory came at a cost. Entire generations were lost on the battlefield. No enemy tested Rome more than Hannibal, Carthage's greatest general. He led his army along with towering war elephants through the treacherous Alps, striking terror into Rome's heart. For years, he ravaged Italy, defeating Roman legions again and again. But Rome did what it always did: it endured. It adapted. It refused to fall. The tide turned. Rome took the fight to Carthage, crushing Hannibal's forces. And in 146 BC, it delivered the final blow. Carthage was burned to the ground, its people enslaved, its name erased from history. Rome was now the undisputed master of the Mediterranean. But victory bred arrogance. And arrogance leads to mistakes. The question was no longer who Rome could conquer but whether it could survive itself. With every victory, Rome grew richer. But wealth brings corruption. The Republic, once built for the people, now served only the elite. The Senate was filled with greed. The common citizen forgotten. Then came Julius Caesar. A brilliant general. A man of the people. He saw Rome's broken system and took matters into his own hands. He conquered Gaul, defied tradition, and marched his army into Rome itself. Power was his for the taking. And he took it. But ambition breeds enemies. The Senate whispered. They feared he would crown himself king. And so, on March 15, 44 BC, the Ides of March, Caesar walked into the Senate. Moments later, daggers flashed. He was stabbed 23 times. Rome's greatest leader fell. And with him, the Republic died. But Rome was not done. Augustus, Caesar's adopted son, took control. He crushed his rivals and declared himself Rome's first emperor. The Republic was gone. In its place the Roman Empire. Thus began the Pax Romana, 200 years of peace and prosperity. But peace is an illusion. Beneath the surface, cracks were already forming. And when Rome cracks, it shatters. Fast forward to the 3rd century AD, Rome was crumbling. Its wealth had once seemed endless, but now the economy was collapsing. Corruption ran wild. The Senate, once the heart of Rome, had become powerless. And the legions, once the greatest fighting force the world had ever seen, now filled with mercenaries, soldiers who fought for gold not for Rome. Loyalty was gone. Discipline was fading. Meanwhile, Rome's enemies were getting stronger. The Visigoths. The Vandals. The Huns. For centuries, they had been kept at bay. But now, they weren't just raiding Rome's borders, they were coming for Rome itself. Then, in 410 AD, the unthinkable happened. The Visigoths, led by their ruthless king, Alaric, marched into Rome. The city that had ruled the world for 800 years, pillaged, burned, humiliated. Rome had fallen. Not completely. Not yet. But this was the beginning of the end. Because once Rome bleeds, it never stops. The year was 476 AD. The Western Roman Empire, once unstoppable, was now just a shadow of its former glory. Its armies were weak. Its leaders corrupt. Rome was no longer feared. It was merely waiting to fall. Then came Odoacer, a barbarian general. He marched into Rome, but there was no great battle. No heroic last stand. The last emperor, a boy Romulus Augustulus, was forced to surrender. And just like that, it was over. 1,000 years of power, conquest, and dominance gone. Not with fire. Not with blood. But with a whimper. But Rome didn't fall in a single day. It rotted from within. And that is the real lesson of its fall. Though Rome fell, its legacy still shapes our world. Our laws, architecture, and governments all bear its mark. But history warns us no empire lasts forever. Are we repeating Rome's mistakes today? Let us know in the comments. And if you love history, subscribe for more epic stories from the past.